being too guarded is not in your interest as an accountant at this stage. Dubai, as you said, attracts lots of attention as a place. Lots of businesses are trying to get here. This is an incredibly noisy market.
And you're always going to have that distribution of innovation. How do the sort of local cultures and local attitudes impact the speed of it? Are we likely to see the rollout in Dubai go the same as the UK, do you think?
The rate at which they spring up buildings over here is unbelievable. Like in the UK, it might take someone 5 years to build a tower. Over here, it's done in a few months, right? They really go all out when it comes to getting projects underway.
I would have thought that it would all be like, pedal to the metal, let's go, let's use the tech, let's drive it. But I suppose in reality, it can never be like that, can it?
We want to use AI, we want to automate. They don't quite know what does that look like because they haven't been as exposed. There's been Digital Accounting Show, Accountex, Festival of Accountants and Bookkeepers, right? There's Accountex North. There's been nothing like that over here.
Can you see a scenario where Dubai actually overtakes the UK in terms of tech adoption? With our fairly gloomy weather and stuttering economy, it's no wonder that more and more UK entrepreneurs are having their heads turned by the opportunities that exist in Dubai. But beyond the amazing weather out there, great living standards and very favourable tax regimes, there's also the beginnings of a very, very interesting accounting tech scene starting to develop. So this week we're talking to Ayman Kaouri, who's based over there, to hear a little bit more about what's going on, what the UK and Dubai can learn from each other, and the importance of communities across digital transformation over industries. We also talk a little bit about how the UK and Dubai scenes might interact and cross over in future, which is a really, really interesting little chat. I'll hand over to Ayman, who's going through a little bit of his background in accounting and bookkeeping, and we'll crack on from there.
Yeah, so Ayman Kaouri, I've been involved in the accounting tech space probably for around 8 years now. My journey started at Xero back in 2018, where I started out leading a partner consulting team, which was basically a team of consultants helping businesses around the UK digitalize, adopt Xero, move away from traditional accounting to a more digital accounting workflow. And that's where you and I first crossed paths. Since then, I moved into a couple of different roles at Xero, whereby I was helping them do more of a strategy execution role in the operations team, cross-functional change in the UK and EMEA markets. And then my last role there was kind of heading up the EMEA emerging markets strategy, so helping them grow into emerging markets in EMEA, which includes the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which are kind of key markets for me now. Now at Scope, so since 2023, I launched Scope Middle East. And what we do, we're basically like a software consultancy / app integrator. We help accounting firms and SMEs adopt the latest cloud-based technologies, primarily focusing on that whole accounting and finance function and streamlining that as much as possible.
Nice, very cool, and loads to jump into there. But going back to that, our time at Xero, I think after I'd left the sales team, I was a bit more bullish on my assertion that actually getting people to use the tech was probably more challenging than selling it to them in the first place, because there's so many less levers that you've got to make that sort of stuff happen. For everyone that doesn't obviously know what we were working on, what were some of the things that we were doing there to try and get that adoption? Because it was so challenging, wasn't it?
It was incredibly challenging, and largely because it was new, and largely because I would say in general, accountants tend to be quite risk averse. And that's probably a good thing. You don't want your accountant probably taking too many risks with your finances, do you? So I'd say for the right reasons, accountants are generally risk averse. However, that also translates itself to probably being risk averse when it comes to change. So what we were finding was it wasn't necessarily, let's say, an allergy to new technology, but more they want to be careful. They don't want to rock the boat too much in their firms. They don't want to alienate clients. So getting practices on board in terms of adopting Xero instead of what was primarily, let's say, Sage Desktop, Sage 50, and spreadsheets as the main way of doing bookkeeping and accounting, to moving to the cloud and Xero and the ecosystem that surrounded that. It was a process, it was a journey. And one of the things that we realized early was, don't try and eat the elephant whole, like try and break it into pieces, right? So we chunked it up. We often did this. You'll remember this. We used to do client segmentation piece first. So let's look at your client base. Let's figure out where's the low hanging fruit and start there. And maybe we try it with a couple of clients and build from there, rather than trying to take on the whole practice at once, which can be overwhelming. And most firms aren't set up to take on a change of that magnitude immediately.
Now we've fast forwarded a few years since that point. Do the fundamentals of things like segmentation and having that plan and all those steps that we used to talk about, are they still best approach now, or have things changed a little bit since then?
I think that's one of those things that's always going to be a key to implementing any kind of change or taking on, I think, a lot of business challenges, even marketing, right? So if you're thinking of marketing your firm, you segment your potential clients, right? You put them into different buckets and you try to come up with approaches that suit them. It's very rare that you have a kind of one size fits all approach that works really effectively. It's a blunt instrument, so to speak. So I think that in general, it's still the right way. Even let's say you've got all your clients using cloud accounting software. The next step might be, okay, well, we're going to use something like a Dext or some kind of other OCR tool for the pre-accounting bit, or a reporting tool. I think taking that same approach of let's experiment with a small number of clients that we feel would be a really good fit and be really amenable to this change. Once our team gets confidence, once we get the feedback from the client and we can refine our approach, then we start rolling it out. That approach, I think, is kind of stood the test of time, so to speak.
And how does that translate then to UAE and specifically Dubai? Because I think a lot of people sort of see that it's just become such a sexy buzzword, hasn't it? I think a lot of people, if they've got a business, they're sort of like half looking at Dubai, thinking, "Oh, should I go over there?" What does that space look like at the moment for accountants adopting tech?
Yeah, so look, I understand the appeal of Dubai. I'm here for the appeal of Dubai. So look, Dubai is a front runner in so many ways. Like, convenience services out here are unbelievable. So I literally order petrol to my house. It gets delivered at the same cost as if I was to go to a petrol station without having to queue up and all of this stuff and get my hands dirty. Someone else, I'll just leave safety is another thing, right? So it's safe enough to kind of leave your petrol cap open so that someone can come and fill it up without you worrying about someone stealing your fuel.
Wow.
Yeah, so like that happens, and it's incredibly convenient. It's an incredibly convenient place. There's an app for almost anything. You can get most things delivered to your house within 15 minutes to half an hour, right? It's unbelievable in that respect. Accounting technology hasn't quite followed the same trajectory so far,
Right.
and there's good reason for that. Accounting's relatively new over here, quite frankly. So VAT, well, tax is new as well. So VAT only came in 2018. Then we had corporate tax last year. So VAT did improve the level of record keeping, but still people could make do with a spreadsheet and their head and just come up with VAT return figures, right, on a quarterly basis. They were able to do that as a whole. So it wasn't like a huge factor. It was significant, but it wasn't digitalizing the whole accounting area. Then you had corporate tax come in, and for the first time ever, most businesses now are subject to an audit, which means that for the first time, they actually need to have really solid records. So this is helping drive a big adoption in accounting technology, and people are moving away from spreadsheets for the first time and moving away from older software for the first time to try and do things more efficiently, also to get better transparency, and so that when it comes to their audit, or even just to keep on top of their finances a bit better, there's a bit more awareness than there was before. Now, so yeah, the adoption has been slower so far, but it's accelerating at the moment.
Sounds like they've had their MTD moment quite a lot earlier into the journey than we have. It's kind of taken us 10, 15 years to get to that tipping point, hasn't it, with the legislation? But what has that meant out there for attitudes in terms of adopting tech? Is it sort of reluctant, sort of dragging their heels and say, "Oh, we've kind of got to do it, so let's do it at the sort of least disruptive way that we can, or are firms really leading into it and saying, look, there's a huge opportunity here, let's go? Like, what's the sort of vibe?
Yeah, so like any market, when there's new software, change coming in, it follows that classic bell curve, right? The adoption curve, where you're getting your, what is it, early adopters, and then you've got your early majority, late majority, and then late adopters. We're very much like, I would say, at the start of that, whereas somewhere like the UK is much further along. Actually, the firms really varies. And for that reason, it's because they probably are segmented in these different categories, depending on their attitude towards change in general and technology. So many people, and we saw this back in the UK when you and I were going around meeting practices. So many like, well, all my team know how to use Sage, they know how to use whatever it was that they're using, and they're happy. Like, why rock the boat kind of thing. So you get many firms in that mindset. But then you get lots of firms that have either maybe they've been overseas. So we get lots of firms coming from the UK, let's say, out here that are they're on board with this stuff already because they've seen it, they've seen the benefits. And then you get firms that are excited by the whole AI buzz. So AI has been a factor that wasn't around when you and I were touring firms, right? So I would say this is like a positive influence on everyone trying to adopt technology for the right reasons. They want to automate. They're starting to understand the value of tech, like ChatGPT, although it's a completely different application. It's opened people's eyes as to actually tech can really be a big enabler for us. And that at least has opened lots of people's eyes to possibilities.
Okay.
So I think that's a really useful lever for us to get in with firms that are saying, hey, we want to use AI, we want to automate. What does that look like? They don't quite know the what does that look like bit because they haven't been as exposed to it as in the UK. I think in the UK there was a lot of education happening from the big vendors because they were really interested in the market. It was a market that they knew, relatively stable, less unknowns. I think there's been some of the big vendors probably haven't been as interested in the UAE market up until more recently. There's starting to be increasing interest, but it's not the same level of interest as to what's been there in the UK and the US, Australia, for example, whereby they're established markets and tech and has been far better tested there, and they kind of know what to expect.
It's really interesting because in a lot of these episodes and sessions that we've done, a big theme that's come out is that one of the challenges around adoption of tech and the reason that firms get stuck is because vendors have become very, very good at dangling the carrot and the shiny object and go, oh, you need this, and the sort of consensus that I've heard from people is that firms haven't necessarily been doing this on their terms. They've just been chasing, been reactive. Right, we need to do this. We need to have invoice capture. We need to do this. We need to do this, and just sort of been dragged along rather than having a very intentional and strategic approach to it. Not everybody, but lots of them enough that it's caused an issue. And I'm just wondering if that's flipped on its head slightly because there's less of a vendor presence. Sounds like from what you're saying, more of an intrinsic drive to move forwards, whether that's people setting up firms there and they know what the goal is, so they want to set about it their way, or the local firms that are saying, well, maybe we're interested in AI or something like that. Do you find there's a difference in approach there, and has that had an impact on rolling this stuff out?
I think there is a difference insofar as you've got these external factors here. So I think early on in our journey, the pre-MTD days, there was no external factors like driving the change. Over here, you've got corporate tax has been one of those things. VAT was one of those things. More recently, AI is another one of those things. So there's these kind of factors that are impacting the market and people's perception of what they need to do. It also creates this whole FOMO effect. So people see other firms potentially talking about tools that they're using. They hear us at Scope kind of talking, and me. You've seen how noisy I've been on LinkedIn since I left Xero. I haven't shut up on a weekday. But that's been a big thing, right? So just like getting aware, and people say, hey, kind of just want to know what you're about, or want to know what all this AI stuff is about. And they honestly don't know what they're looking for. but they know they want to do something. This is an incredibly noisy market. Dubai, as you said, attracts lots of attention as a place. Lots of businesses are trying to get here. It's relatively easy to get set up over here. So you get there's been a real increase in the number of accounting firms that have set up since corporate tax came along. Businesses are looking to take advantage of the opportunity and the fact that more SMEs are going to need accountants to help do those VAT returns and corporate tax returns. They worry about fines and getting it wrong. So that means that there is a lot more firms now, and that therefore there's a lot more competition. So a firm that has traditionally maybe just competed on price is now starting to flirt with the idea of competing on differentiation, and technology is a part of that.
It's really interesting because my assumption, having not been there or been involved in it, would be that it would be a far faster and far more dynamic place because of how the city is sort of sprung up, because of all the stories that are told about it. I would have thought that it would all be like pedal to the metal, let's go, let's use the tech, let's drive it. But I suppose in reality, it can never be like that, can it? And you're always going to have that distribution of innovation that you mentioned a little bit ago. But how do the sort of local cultures and local attitudes impact the speed of it? Are you finding anything like that in terms of that culture, or are we likely to see the rollout in Dubai go the same as the UK, do you think?
So the differences with the UK market, I would say, is awareness. So awareness is relatively high in the UK right now.
Yeah.
When you and I were there at Xero, at that moment in time, there was a XeroCon, there was Accountex was about. Since then, there's been Digital Accounting Show, there's Accounting Web Live, there's Festival of Accountants and Bookkeepers, right? There's Accountex North. There's been nothing like that over here so far, which means that awareness is very low. Now, what I would say in terms of attitudes are, as soon as you make people aware, and once they're bought in, the rate of change tends to be greater. So people that are convinced are kind of really action oriented here. So you see this with like the rate at which they spring up buildings over here is unbelievable. Like in the UK, it might take someone 5 years to build a tower. Over here, it's done in a few months, right? So like they really go all out when it comes to getting projects underway and delivering. And I think that also rings true with technology adoption. So but once you've got someone convinced, they often want to say, okay, let's go. And they're really up for the change. So yeah, I think that's probably something that maybe UK firms can learn from. I think early on, and there is some wisdom in taking your time and making sure that the firm is ready. Some people probably take it too far, and maybe they almost see change as a tick box, like say, yeah, we've gone cloud. But in reality, it's more of it's a spectrum, right? It's like, how far have you gone rather than have we gone?
So do you think then, or can you see a scenario where Dubai actually overtakes the UK in terms of tech adoption and what they can do? Because the awareness thing is solvable, right? Very quickly. You throw money at it and you drive awareness and you can control that. So do you see a scenario like that, or do you think that the UK is going to continue to kind of stay ahead in this sort of arena for a while?
I think it'll take a few years, to be honest, for there to be a catch up. I think there probably will come a point where, feasibly Dubai could overtake. I mean, just looking at the UK economy, probably wasn't what it was 7 or 8 years ago. That's not the same over here. The economy here is booming, and it's much better. And there seems to be there's somewhat of a brain drain, I would say, from the UK as well. Lots of people that have perhaps been there and been loyal for a while and stayed are jumping ship to places like Dubai. A lot of successful people are making that move. So I think the UAE is benefiting from that. And it's probably only a matter of time before it is able to lead the way in this area as well. Particularly like we've got e-invoicing being rolled out next year over here. So that's going to be a third factor, right? So we had VAT, we had corporate tax, and now we've got e-invoicing. So depending on what that rollout looks like, I think that's likely to be very significant for B2B. E-invoicing is going to be huge, whereas in the UK, we haven't got that rolled out. I think it's in B2G only at the moment in the UK. to my knowledge. So yeah, I think that's going to be a significant factor, and that could further help like there being a step change in the tech adoption in the space. But we're probably still a few years away what the UK was. But I'm very optimistic. There's a thriving fintech scene here, lots of investment going into fintech. And part of that is obviously accounting tech. There's lots of spend management platforms, for example, getting to up the equivalent of a Pleo in the UK. There's quite a few players in that space, all at a similar place. So I think with the existence and the emergence of these kind of accounting tech players, awareness will increase. We're obviously trying to do our piece with Accounting Refigured as an event as well to raise awareness, and that will, I think, pay dividends. But it's not like a flick of a light switch thing. It takes a little bit of time to build this up.
And I think those events that you called out a bit ago, and I think Alternative is another one that you didn't mention, so shout out to Zoe with that as well. But that when those events started coming out, that became a real flashpoint, didn't it, in the adoption? Because suddenly you've got people exchanging ideas and what are you doing and what are we doing, and you can speak to your opposite number within another firm, and then just the FOMO sort of accelerates and everything like that. And I guess you must be seeing a little bit of that going on with Accounting Refigured as well, right, out in Dubai.
For sure, man. Like, as I said, this didn't really exist. So before Accounting Refigured last year, which was the first one we did in March 2024, before that, if you're interested in accounting technology, you're going to either an accounting conference or a finance conference, and you don't get a huge selection. You don't get necessarily the main players there. You don't necessarily get the best exhibitor experience, I would say. Tends to be more focused on technical accounting stuff rather than the tech. Then we've got like these big tech conferences. I don't know what the likes of it are in the UK, but over here you've basically got technology as a whole and not just accounting tech. So imagine showing up to an event, a big exhibition hall, and you've got everything from like robots designed for Amazon warehouses to POS machines to accounting software to, any other payment platform. It could be absolutely anything. So like, it's very difficult to go somewhere like that and find exactly what you're looking for. It's a needle in a haystack type thing, right? And you do like 5,000 to 15,000 attendees in these places for some of the bigger ones. It's chaos. So there's been really nowhere that people can go that are interested in accounting tech. So we've created that. Alongside that, there's obviously the conference element that we do. So educating, talking about this kind of digital practice journey, what it looks like, what are the factors that people need to be taking into account, what are others people doing. So we often bring people from the UK. So I've got really good connections of accounting firms that are both in the UK and in the UAE, and they're often quite generous with their time and are happy to talk at the event. So we've got a few of them this year coming as well, and the likes of Jerry Williams and Joe David, etc. So these guys have been there and done it in the UK. They're now over here, and they're sharing with the market what they've learned. So I think to some extent we were able to leverage and fast track some of the learnings that were made in the UK, get them out here in a forum like Accounting Refigured, and start getting a bit of a community. So that's something that we're looking to build on even more this year. So we're doing our next edition on the 8th of May. Now, the whole idea is that this year we're going to not just wait till the next conference, and actually we're going to have more regular touch points throughout the year to really enhance the community and create more of that spirit, because I think it's so important, and I saw it being a really critical factor in the UK. Yes, these people are effectively competing with one another, but the attitude to competition is the key factor here. They realize that there's enough business out there to go around, and the stage of the market is at, we need as many people educating it as possible. So kind of being too guarded is not in your interest as an accountant at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think vendors are showing enough interest in UAE, or are they maybe leaving some money on the table by not going harder there?
So I feel that they could go. I'm here because I'm bought into the interest, into the levels of opportunity out here. And I was really bullish about the opportunity out here at my time at Xero. I feel that they could be more interested, But
Yeah.
naturally, I also understand the stance that they're taking. So the stance is that we've still not fully penetrated our core markets. We've got limited resources. If we're having to kind of stack rank which areas to invest in, let's invest in the ones that we understand better, that and we also are able to maybe have a better gauge of what ROI looks like. I also feel that in reality, these kind of fields that they're farming at the moment are not going to bear the same level of fruit, right? And they're getting more and more cramped. There's more and more other businesses getting involved. Competition's very fierce. They're red oceans, in the kind of taking the whole blue ocean strategy notion of things.
Yeah.
I'd say the UAE is more of a blue ocean. There's a lot of opportunity, and whoever comes in at this stage and kind of grabs the bull by the horns can really take a good slice of the pie and establish themselves. So I think their interest should be higher. I am starting to see an increase of interest for sure, and that's like our recent partnership at Scope with Dext is a real example of that. You know, Dext have organically picked up business. They've put us as their primary resellers in the region. They're only resellers in the region so far. So they're kind of really interested, and I think that's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be fascinated to see how that pans out over time, because I think it's fair to say that a lot of the change here was vendor driven. It was the early account managers driving things and saying, look, you've got to change, you've got to go to the cloud. We didn't necessarily have the stick of MTD, but it was like, here's where you've got to do it, dragging out that compliance is dead argument or whatever people had to do to get things moving. But I'd be fascinated to see how that space in Dubai evolves, with it being much more intrinsically driven by you know, motivators like legislation, or we want to get towards AI, or we want to do this. I'd be fascinated to see how those two sort of paths diverge, or whether they come back together again. So it feels like, because this show is not about telling accountants what to do, right? Because there's a lot of people that want to do that. But it feels like, from what you're saying, that if they know digital is the way they want to go, if that's the direction they are convinced is the right way to go, and they haven't really taken any steps yet, they probably need to be a bit more bullish, because that's what we're seeing working out there. There's a risk that firms might overtake, or that, you know, that the space in Dubai might overtake the UK firms. And I guess just as easy as it is for firms to start here and set up in Dubai, the opposite must be true as well, right? So I think it adds an interesting new dynamic to the growth of the accounting tech scene.
Yeah, I'd say so I am starting to see some maybe homegrown firms out here that are playing, actually quite interested in getting into the UK. So maybe that's something to worry about. And I'd say the key thing, that maybe a key differentiator to some of the firms out here, is they're more used to getting access and relying on lower cost labor in somewhere like Southeast Asia or the Indian subcontinent. They've got those supply chains established. They are more trusting of those areas and the personnel there, that the training is up to speed, that those guys know what they're doing. They have high levels of trust for using those back office teams than perhaps what we're seeing in the UK. And that could therefore kind of bring in a new dynamic to firms coming in. Are they going to be competing on price, like bringing some of that whole price competition into the UK even more? And what pressure is that going to put some UK firms under? I would say, look, there's always going to be a mix. So it would be really interesting to see those firms that are so those back office teams that are currently heavily reliant on manual labor, people typing stuff up. Imagine if they have like the latest technology to use as well, and how much more efficient they could be. Like that could be a real force to be reckoned with. So I always feel that it's never going to be tech alone. It's never going to be people alone. It's who can strike the right balance and it kind of go to market really effectively with it. That's the key thing. So I think there's a type of firm that we haven't seen yet that is probably out there that could really take things by storm. And we're starting to see some of them crop up, but it's really early.
Yeah, early days, but really exciting to think about where it could go and what that could mean for the UK market as well. Ayman, fascinating. We'll definitely have to chat again and get a progress update from you on what things are going on in in a few months' time. But for now, we'll finish off with the fun question that I ask everybody, which was if anybody made now an international blockbuster of the accounting tech scene around the world, who would you want to play you in that film?
Or the accounting tech scene around a film about the accounting tech scene. I don't know. So normally I get told that I'm some kind of Aquaman. I get Aquaman vibes out there. So maybe some kind of yeah. So if Jason Momoa is ever out of business and needs someone to come in, then maybe that's me. But yeah, I think I'll have to hit the gym a little bit more to get up to his levels.
That's a good choice. That's a very good choice. Ayman, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate your insights. I think we've really only scratched the surface of what's going on out there, but it sounds fascinating. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, connect with you, ask any questions, or learn a little bit more about Accounting Refigured, what is the best way for them to do that?
I'd probably say LinkedIn is probably the most accessible. I'm very active on there. Reach out to me, drop me a message. I'm often prepared to give people some of my time if I feel that I can add value.
Yeah, amazing. Ayman, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate.